What's up, everybody? It's the group Sam and Eric, and today we're going to bring you the greatest crash course ever assembled in human history. Okay.
Oh no, okay. You tried to call me out, right? Okay.
Look, maybe I can't guarantee that, but here's what I can guarantee. Today we're going to be talking about a novel, Sula, by Toni Morrison, and we're going to be focusing on four main concepts. Alright, the first one is connections between Sula and Shadrach and how they are linked. The second one is two specific interactions between Sula and Shadrach and Shadrach's specific message of always. The third one is the significance of Shadrach's final Suicide Day parade. And the fourth one is just Shula's death. Alright, now that's what I can guarantee. I guarantee you that.
I guarantee you that.
Thank you, Tim Tebow, for that. Alright, that's enough talking. Let's get into it. Okay, so to start off, we must give a little bit of background info for Sula and Shadrach. The novel spans from the years 1919 to 1965, and that basically starts from Sula as a 10-year-old and leads to her eventual death. That's in 1940, so see a big part of Shula's life. So Shula's life is pretty complicated. She lives in a chaotic household. Her father passed at the age of 3. She lives with her mother, Hannah, her grandmother, Eva, 3 adopted children, all with the same name, and an alcoholic. So a young girl exposed to alcohol and prostitution, living with strangers, having no father figure, not to mention living in an economically and socially poor place to begin with. I mean, Shula had been set up to be a socially deviant her whole life. So as a young girl, Shula begins to develop a relationship with her peer Nell, and she visits her house. And when she does that, it's like when she visits her house, it's the only thing close to normal that she experiences, and she falls in love with the peace and quiet of it. Shula and Nell's bond only strengthens until the Chicken and Little incident where, Shula accidentally murders the little boy. The two girls soon begin to grow apart. Nell chooses a life of social conformity, being a true mother, having kids, getting married, whereas Shula goes completely the opposite route. She even leaves the bottom, develops a wild life, sexual affairs with multiple men, married men. Yeah, just two complete opposite paths. Shadrach, on the other hand, is a World War I veteran who is suffering heavily from post-traumatic stress disorder. His biggest fear is not death itself, but the anticipation of death and not knowing when death will occur. So in order to cope with this, he creates what he calls the National Suicide Day, and it's created annually on January 3rd. And it is a day meant for people to kill themselves or kill others. And so basically the other 364 can be lived peacefully. Some weird logic, right? Well, long story short, we don't see too much of Shadrach throughout the novel, but we do see him at the end in the final Suicide Day parade, and we will definitely get into that later on. All right, so now that we have some of that boring background information out of the way, we can now get into prompt number 1. And what I would say basically is that there are many connections we can realistically make about both Shula and Shadrach. Obviously, both the characters are from the same town, which automatically links them together. They both deal with high amounts of chaos in their lives, not only because of the town they live in, but due to their environmental and past experiences. For both characters, the idea of finding an escape or an outlet from their personal lives and the pain is vital for them. Shadrach does this by creating National Suicide Day, and Shula does it by being with Nell in her home of peace and quiet. Both the characters also have a common search for personal identity. Shadrach deals with the stress of fighting in World War I, and he makes an attempt to try and find himself and his meaning after returning to the bottom. Shula makes the same attempt, but in a different way. So Shula deals with the independence of not really conforming to society's usual standard and the bottom's usual standard. This is a major reason why her friendship with Nell deteriorates and why, the bottom hates her so much, which we'll talk about. During the argument with her grandmother, Eva, Shula states, and I quote, "I don't want to make somebody else. I want to make myself." So that basically explains it. So yeah, many similarities, but the big ones, dealing with chaos, being outcast, trying to find their identity, all really big key ones for Shula and Shadrach. So for prompt number 2, there are 2 key interactions for Shula and Shadrach. The first interaction was after the Chicken Little incident. Shula, really scared, really sad, crying. She goes to Shadrach's house for some help. And basically, although finding some peace with how well organized his house was, she becomes utterly confused after Shadrach creeps behind her and yells, excuse me, always. The novel explains he had answered a question she had not asked, and its promise licked at her feet. Although it proved as mere confusion for Sula, Shadrach's intent of the message was to provide a sense of comfort and relief to Sula after he recognized the sadness in her eye. Unfortunately, however, Sula could not find much comfort and relief knowing that her childhood innocence, friendship with Nell, and the meaning of her life had all changed. Sula and Shadrach meet again toward the end of the novel in 1939. This encounter basically is the culminating point for the Bottom's hatred for Sula. Basically, what happened was that Shadrach, who, is usually pretty mean to people, decided to be nice to Sula. He tips his hat and is polite. Shula is scared by this and runs away. But Desi, the person who was spying on the event, believes that there are two devils at work and spreads it all around the Bottom. The whole Bottom just hates her. For sure, the notion of watching your mother burn, sleeping with your best friend's wife, intentionally tripping a 5-year-old boy, and now this, my goodness, it was like Kevin Durant in OKC.
From Texas, number 35, Kevin Durant.
All right, so for the third topic, it's the significance of Shadrach's final Suicide Day parade. Now, I did briefly touch on it earlier in the video. So basically, the event takes place after Shula's death. And you would think, with the way we talked about all the hatred for Shula. You'd think these people would be as fired up as Gronk on draft day.
Man, I'm so fired up, man. He was all hyped up, and he was flipping out, put the helmet on, screaming.
No, that's incorrect. Actually, the town's very depressed and sad. For one, the loss of Shula it makes everybody lose some order in their everyday lives. Ironically, hating on Shula made people better spouses, parents, and people in general. When she dies, many people in the town adopt a nonchalant, crappy, disgraceful attitude, for the lack of a better word. Also, there's a seriously harsh winter that comes along, and a lot of people get sick and die. This further depletes the morale of the people. So basically, the Bottom, it just was not the place to be during this time. So January 3rd, 1941 comes around, and basically kind of the cold weather, the winter has died down. However, during this date, Shadrach, he doesn't feel like his normal self. He doesn't feel as angry and as bitter as he usually does on this date. So regardless, he decides he's going to give it another crack at it. So he leads his usual march across the town. However, this time, most of the people in the town, they join him. Then they decide that they're going to attack the bridge across the town being built for the rich white people. The group, basically, when they get to it, they create total chaos. They start throwing the bricks and stones, and basically they cause so much chaos that the bridge collapses and kills basically most of the protesters. However, Shadrach is one of the very few that survive and is watching from above. The event kind of highlights the meaning of death and signifies the fragile aspect of life. This event teaches readers how to live every moment of life to its fullest and appreciate people while they are around. The death of Shula also shows just how quick and sudden death can be, and it left Shadrach and Nell in a great deal of sorrow because they didn't truly appreciate Shula while she was around, signifying how everybody should appreciate, friends and family while they are around. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the poetic justice in Shula's death. Yeah, I know y'all hear the music in the background. Yeah, I had to do it. Great song, Kendrick Lamar, Drake. Gotta have it. Had to do it. So as I touched on before, Shula did have an unexpected death. She became suddenly ill and passed away. There was no doubt a high level of poetic justice in her death because many of the townspeople who had hated her, like she was Brett Favre making his return to Lambeau Field or something.
I didn't think it would be a good reception, and it was worse than that.
Okay, my bad with all that. I'm going to tone it down. My bad. Hey, that's my bad. Hey, look, anyway, the people at the Bottom that hated her like that, they actually relied on her for so much. The hate for Shula made them better people. The wives would spend more time with their husbands and children. They didn't want their husbands to be sleeping with them or hurting their children, or they just wanted to be not like Shula. So after she passes, the townspeople get a little bit of that poetic justice for how they treated her. And they not only end up depressed and saddened for a long period of time, but, most of them kind of pass away on the tunnel collapse. Or cold weather, forgot to mention that one. Overall, the event teaches us how to treat people with respect, regardless of what they believe in. Sure, Shula made plenty of mistakes in her life, but she was still a young girl/woman just trying to find herself and her true purpose in life. Obviously, the town was upset at her for leaving the bottom and living a little bit of a wild life, but I think everybody should respect a human being's right to live their life the way they want to live it and believe in what they want to believe in. All right, y'all, that about wraps it up for this crash course. I really appreciate y'all watching. I know there were a couple things wrong with it. I know sometimes the camera was a little weird. Sometimes you couldn't see my eyes. Sometimes you could. You see my hat, all that. So that's my bad on that. The camera was a little weird. I know I was rambling a little bit. I got a little heavy with the sports references. I'm sorry about that. Just, you had to bear with me. But if you're still watching, I appreciate it. Hope you guys learned something about, this good old book, Shula, Toni Morrison. It's a good book. And until next time, it's your boy Sam. It's the group, Sam and Eric. Peace out, y'all.
With weights in the weight room, so he's stitched up in the left hand doing all this.
Oh, it's over!